Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are starting a new series on the channel. It's going to be a pretty short one. It's 5 chapters, but I'm going to do it in 2 videos. This one is called How Much Does It Cost to Fall in Love? And it's by Useless Donut. There actually will be another Useless Donut fic coming later this year on the channel. However, it will not be the same ship as this one because this one is not a Kiribaku. It is a Bakugou Katsuki and Shinso Hitoshi. And they are the only 2 real characters in this story. There are some other characters mentioned, but they are the only 2 main characters. This fic is rated M, but I don't think there's anything too scandalous mentioned in here. It's more just implied sexual content. Obviously, since it's Bakugou and Shinso, it is a My Hero Academia fanfic. And the additional tags for this fic are getting together, fluff, pining, aged up characters are pro heroes, implied sexual content, a tiny bit of angst, Bakugou Katsuki swears a lot, mentions of violence, it happens off screen, that's the main reason for, I think, it being M. And I kind of also want to throw in just a little thing that this is also coffee shop AU. It's not tagged as one, but it's kind of coffee shop. Alright, here's the summary. Pro hero Bakugou Katsuki has had a rough day. All he wants is some caffeine, but what he gets instead is a blast from the past in the form of a deeply sarcastic, failed to become a hero barista named Shinso Hitoshi. Shinso enjoys his part-time cover job at Nocturne Cafe. It gives him a sense of normalcy after the often heart-wrenching jobs he takes as a top-secret underground hero. A job that Bakugou definitely doesn't have security clearance to know about. Too bad Bakugou doesn't know how to leave well enough alone and desperately wants to know why Shinso gave up on his dream. Shinso just wants to have a relaxing shift at his cover job, but it doesn't look like that will happen anytime soon. Alright, here's chapter 1. 5,000 yen. Katsuki had spent the last 12 hours on a deeply boring stakeout. Sure, he'd caught the villain, but the fight had been underwhelming and, as he'd said, boring. He deserved caffeine. He was desperate for it, actually, enough that he forewent his favorite cafe near his apartment and walked to the first place he found. Some place called Nocturne Cafe? It was a stupid name, and Katsuki felt the copious amounts of potted flowers outside was frankly overkill. He wanted coffee, not a trip to the Arboretum. And it only got worse from there. The shop was playing some chill lo-fi music Jiro would approve of, and smelled faintly of spice and coffee grinds. Katsuki subconsciously approved of the interior decor, a habit he'd never quite kicked, but this place wouldn't be that bad. "What are you doing here?" The voice was flat, and the reason this was the worst decision Katsuki had made in weeks, and he had made a lot of questionable decisions. But this time, Shinso stood before him, leaning over the counter, chin on his hand. He looked about as pleased as if he'd stepped in dog shit. "Caffeine," Bakugou snapped, stepping forward. The sleepy shit show should be able to handle that much, right? "Triple shot espresso." "Please." Shinso stared at him flatly. "What?" "A triple shot espresso. Please." Shinso clarified, his grin revealing straight white teeth. Katsuki could feel the rage climbing up his spine. He pitched forward, slamming a palm onto the countertop. It was a testament to several anger management sessions that his words were only snarled and not screamed. "Give me caffeine, or so help me God, I will rip your ribs out one by one and use them as drumsticks." "I can't believe you're still an immature little shit." Shinso sighed, his eyes flicking down to the register, as if he didn't need to look at Katsuki, because Katsuki wasn't a threat. Katsuki stood there and bristled with fury, while Shinso idly poked at the screen in front of him, then turned the screen around to face Katsuki. That'll be 5,000 yen. Katsuki's eyes bugged out.
What? It says 500 yen, right there.
Katsuki sputtered, pointing at the menu. Shinso's smile reached his eyes.
Yeah, but there's an upcharge for being a huge dick. You know I'm friends with Izuku, right? Should I make it 50,000 yen? I'm gonna kill something.
Katsuki hissed. He just wanted caffeine, god fucking damn it. Was there nothing Deku didn't make worse? Even if he was actually on pretty good terms with Deku now, he knew the little shit would never approve of Shinso's evil extortion.
Shit.
And then, because he makes good money, because he's a good fucking hero, he swiped his card and paid 5,000 yen for a fucking triple espresso. For the first time, Shinso looked shocked. Katsuki felt it was a nice look on him, a refreshing change from languid and smug.
Oh, you paid that.
Shinso didn't even look guilty, insufferable prick.
Please, I need caffeine.
Katsuki growled. His hands were starting to smoke. He was too tired, too wound up, and had another couple hours of paperwork to get through before he could go home. Shinso gave him a long look, his purple gaze steady and measuring.
Coming right up. I'll give you an extra shot on the house.
Maybe Shinso wasn't an absolute prick after all.
Think because you look like shit, and I'm pitying you.
Never mind. Maybe if Shinso hadn't said that last bit, Katsuki wouldn't have done it. But he did, so Katsuki couldn't quite help himself from saying the most hurtful thing he could think of.
Pitying me? I'm not a washed-up UA grad working in a coffee shop. Why the fuck aren't you a hero, mind freak?
Katsuki snapped the words out with as much malice as he could muster up. But Shinso didn't look hurt. He looked, well, unimpressed. Katsuki didn't like it. He was an impressive guy and deserved better reactions to his insults.
Didn't feel like it,
Shinso said, waved one large hand. He fussed around behind the counter, apparently preparing what should be a quadruple shot espresso. Katsuki's head nearly exploded.
Didn't feel like it? Are you fucking kidding me?
Nah.
After all that bullshit about becoming a hero.
Katsuki growled, circling over to the pickup spot.
You just didn't feel like it and became a fucking minimum wage worker.
Who else would take me? Shinso said, with this happy little smile that must be designed to piss off Katsuki, because it sure had Katsuki seeing red. Shinso was supposed to be like him, like the rest of his class. Katsuki had always known he'd be a hero, or he'd die trying. He'd thought Shinso was the same way. He'd never admitted out loud, but he'd respected Shinso's drive to get transferred into his class. He'd even helped the shithead with additional combat training back when he was trying to catch up with everyone. If he remembered correctly, Shinso had been a complete menace by the time they'd graduated, and then Katsuki had lost touch with him because Katsuki never bothered to keep in contact with people who didn't actively force themselves into his personal space.
Shinso, did you even try?
Katsuki asked. Shinso flipped like a switch on a machine, not looking at him.
No one wanted to work with me, I guess. I didn't really try that hard, though.
Katsuki snatched his hands off the countertop before he left burn marks. As it was, little puffs of smoke harmlessly dissipated into the cafe's air. It was probably a good thing that it was late and no one else was there, because Katsuki really shouldn't be losing his cool like this.
That's insane,
Katsuki said.
If you could graduate UA, then an agency would definitely take you. It's the best hero school in the country. You're a fucking embarrassment.
Probably. Shinso nodded, then pushed the drink over.
4 shots for one aggro dickhead.
Katsuki snatched it, then downed it in a few burning gulps. Shinso stared at him.
Should I be concerned? Be concerned about yourself,
Katsuki shouted, tongue numb and burned in his mouth. It was worth it, though, to see surprise on Shinso's face again.
What the fuck happened to you?
I just realized I wasn't cut out to be a hero. Shinso sighed, then pinned Katsuki with a look. Just leave it, Blasty. I don't need to clear my life plans with you. Go back to saving the city, and I'll keep the good citizens caffeinated. You can be included in that if you behave. Katsuki glared at him. Shinso looked comfortable here, in his stupid apron and name tag, and it rubbed Katsuki the wrong way. Shinso was too big for this place, his eyes too hard, his confidence too much, for someone who'd apparently tossed everything he'd cared about straight out the window. It pissed Katsuki off to no end. And while he technically didn't care what Shinso did, he couldn't deny how wrong this felt, and he still needed to do his paperwork. The caffeine he'd just pounded back had left him shaky and awake, but exhaustion was still dogging his heels. This whole encounter was suddenly so much more than Katsuki was willing to deal with at the moment, so he just satisfied himself with saying,
"This isn't over."
Then he stormed out of the shop to face his death by paperwork. Chapter 2. Just the tip. There is a content warning for this chapter that some things mentioned about happenings at Shinso's job, but they are off screen. Mentions of human trafficking and various types of life or death situations and interrogations. Hitoshi only worked at the cafe maybe 4 hours a week because his time was goddamn valuable. There were only 2 hours left of his shift. It was already dark outside, and he couldn't wait to go home and sit in a hot bath and pretend everything in his life was fine. Just 2 hours, and then he could leave. Such a small window of time, such a narrow margin for anything particularly annoying to happen. And yet, the pro hero Ground Zero was coming in during his shift for the second time in a row, and he still looked like someone had shoved a cactus up his ass. Bakugou kind of always looked like that, but no one else could make that cactus in ass look seem handsome. But that was Bakugou Katsuki for you, always doing the impossible. Hitoshi was reflexively annoyed by the disturbance of his nice, peaceful late-night shift. He quickly busied himself with straightening already straight display mugs, specifically so Bakugou would think he wasn't getting attention. Hitoshi couldn't really stop himself from indulging in antagonizing Bakugou. It was always fun, and he hadn't had many chances to do it since graduating from UA. Hitoshi had been snapped up immediately by an underground agency on Aizawa's recommendation, and suddenly his entire career had to be secret. Everything was classified, which made it even more hilarious that Bakugou had thought he'd given up on being a hero. No, it was the complete opposite. Hitoshi was dead serious about his career, so serious that he'd never consider telling Bakugou when he didn't have the appropriate security clearance.
"Hey, shithead, get me a cold brew and don't charge me out the ass for it."
Bakugou's voice was too loud and grating like always. Hitoshi stopped himself from turning to look.
"Can you at least act normal when we have other customers in?"
Hitoshi said, still facing the display mugs. Granted, the only other customers were a half-dead grad student whose head was dwarfed by noise-canceling headphones and someone in the corner who'd probably been asleep for several hours already. There were a few moments of silence, which Hitoshi felt was good enough behavior from Bakugou to merit him finally turning around. Then he swallowed hard because Bakugou looked good. He was wearing a clean white V-neck and black jeans, understated for him, but undeniably flattering. Hitoshi ran his gaze over him, catching on the undisguised strength of his thighs, the way his shirt pulled a little tight across the chest.
"What?"
Bakugou grumbled. Hitoshi dragged his eyes away from Bakugou's muscular shoulders and back to the cash register. You don't look like shit, Hitoshi said, then regretted it because he actually hadn't meant to antagonize Bakugou. Miraculously, Bakugou didn't seem particularly bothered.
Just came from a meeting with sponsors. They want me to do a bunch of photo shoots. I'm a hero, not a goddamn model.
Bakugou sounded annoyed, but Hitoshi was stuck on the whole model Bakugou thing. Hitoshi would pay to see that, and not just to make fun of him. Bakugou might be a dick, but he was a hot dick, and Hitoshi wasn't above noticing it. Is there much of a difference? Hitoshi mumbled and turned to grab the cold brew Bakugou had asked for. He could feel the heat of Bakugou's annoyance toasting his back.
Well, I risk my life every goddamn day so losers like you can give up on their dreams and serve people like me cold brew. So yeah, there's a difference.
Keep that up and I'll charge you 5 million yen for this. Hitoshi held up the caffeine. To his complete shock, Bakugou laughed, throwing his head back, his grin wide and sharp. And wow, that was a good look on him. Hitoshi stared shamelessly.
Don't do that,
Bakugou told him, laughter subsiding.
I'll actually pay it to prove the fucking point. Bet your sorry ass could use a tip, huh? Can't be making much here.
A tip? Just the tip? And oh, God. Hitoshi was so attracted to him. Everything about this was bad. You're a dick, Hitoshi told him primely, and charged him the normal amount. You know, it's pretty rude to rub my failures in my face. Might actually hurt my feelings. And to be fair, Hitoshi might have been hurt if he'd truly failed to become a hero, but also couldn't quite bring himself to believe that Bakugou would twist that knife if Hitoshi truly looked torn up about it. And Hitoshi was guilty of intentionally provoking Bakugou with his apparent lack of a heroic career. But then,
I hate pathetic losers like you,
Bakugou said with an arrogant little scoff. And maybe Hitoshi was giving him too much credit. Bakugou might actually be mean enough to rub that kind of thing in. Then Bakugou went on, staring straight into Hitoshi's eyes and saying,
I don't get why you had to give up. If you want back in the hero scene, it's not too late.
Hitoshi's mouth went dry. The concept of Bakugou believing in him was so strange, so foreign, that it made it kind of hard to breathe. Bakugou turned to leave, but not before looking over his shoulder with one last sneer.
You want to be a hero? Beg me to train you, and I might consider it. Groveling would be a good look on you.
And then he was gone, leaving Hitoshi stuck with two thoughts. One, that he'd definitely given Bakugou too much credit, and he was actually a huge dick. Two, that Bakugou was exactly the kind of dick Hitoshi would strongly consider getting on his knees for. And then Bakugou was back again on Hitoshi's shift the next week, and Hitoshi kind of wanted to die. That put them at what, 3 times in a row? Hitoshi wanted to go back and hide in a dumpster and never speak to another person again, let alone Bakugou Katsuki. He'd been undercover for the last few days, and all he wanted was to enjoy some goddamn normalcy. He was even dressed in the comfort clothes that his boss graciously allowed. Gray sweats, a gray sweatshirt with a gray cat on it, and a headband holding back his hair. Comfortable. Normal. It was everything he needed after pretending to be a part of a gang that was trafficking tourists. A deeply unpleasant affair that had lasted for nearly a week. It had been really dark. He'd gotten the information they needed to make arrests, but now he kind of wanted to pour bleach directly onto his eyeballs. Instead, he got Bakugou Katsuki swaggering into the haven that was Nocturne Cafe. You again, Hitoshi groaned. Bakugou was in his Ground Zero getup today and radiating peak arrogance. He looked incredibly out of place in the pastel yellows of the cafe, and Hitoshi braced himself. Bakugou slapped a paper down on the counter. It appeared to be some kind of pamphlet. You can't pay with that, Hitoshi said blandly, and earned a frustrated grunt from Bakugou.
It's got openings at my agency. There's like intern positions and part-time work even you can handle. You can't really be surviving off a few hours of work a week.
Hitoshi was floored. Bakugou knew his schedule. Bakugou had put in any effort towards Hitoshi's failed hero career. This was getting awkward, and he needed to nip it in the bud.
Look, Bakugou, I don't know what you're trying to do, but I don't want to be a hero anymore. Just drop it.
The lies tasted bitter in his mouth, but they were necessary and unfortunately ineffective.
Don't fuck with me,
Bakugou said, his voice low and quiet.
I don't believe that for a second. I have no idea what crawled up your ass and made you quit, but it's stupid, and there's no reason you can't try again.
You're not listening, Hitoshi said. This was frustrating. This whole week had been frustrating, and Hitoshi wasn't really in the mood for Bakugou poking around in his life right now. He'd had to watch people be nearly beaten to death just the day before, and yeah, it was weird, but somehow making lattes for entitled people was soothing to him after all of that. It was nice to deal with problems that could be solved by remaking a drink and didn't involve any life or death choices.
I don't listen to bullshit,
Bakugou snarled, drawling out the last word like it tasted bad.
What? Are you scared? Crime stats got your panties in a bunch? We need more heroes now. Not people giving up for no reason. Just admit you still want to be a hero and give up on this crap.
He waved around the cafe.
I like this crap,
Hitoshi hissed back.
You don't have the right to walk in here and tell me how to live my life.
Bakugou blinked at him. There was a moment when Hitoshi actually thought a fight might break out. But then Bakugou visibly deflated, running a hand through his hair.
Yeah, you're right. Still fucking disappointing, though.
And with that, he was gone. The pamphlet, the only evidence he'd ever been there. That, and Hitoshi's resulting terrible mood. Why did he feel like he'd just let down Aizawa or something? Was Bakugou really pulling the "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed" shtick with him? Unbelievable. Hitoshi picked up the pamphlet and opened it. There were a couple of positions circled, ranging from sidekick gigs to social media interns, and even a receptionist option. Bakugou had written his number in the middle of the trifold with a message, "I can give you a rec for any of these." It was thoughtful. Not that Hitoshi really wanted him nosing around in his life, but it had taken a long time before Hitoshi had met anyone who encouraged him to be a hero. It may be a little late now, but it was nice to be believed in, even if he'd never in a million years have expected it to come from Bakugou. But then, Bakugou had always taken other people's failings a little too personally. Izuku having an off day? Bakugou flew off the rails. Todoroki pulling punches in the sports festival? Bakugou still brought it up. Maybe Hitoshi should have expected this. He just couldn't think of a way to get Bakugou off his back. Just how pathetic did he have to be before Bakugou gave up on him? What if he really didn't want Bakugou to give up on him? That was selfish, probably. Hitoshi sighed and mechanically took care of a pair of customers who'd walked in. It was nice, mindless work. Mindless enough that Hitoshi could still spend time remembering how disappointment looked in Bakugou's red eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he hadn't even slammed the door when he left. And so it went. Bakugou would show up during Hitoshi's shifts, in sweats, in a button-up once, one time with pink sunglasses that were unfairly cute, once with his hair clipped back. Every time, he threw around some vague insults about how Hitoshi was a coward, a loser, was too afraid to be a hero, etc., etc. Hitoshi charged him random amounts depending on his mood, and lived for the rare moments he could get Bakugou to throw his head back and laugh. One time, he charged Bakugou 6,969 yen and 69 sen for a latte, And Bakugou had legitimately ugly snorted so loud it startled a real laugh out of Hitoshi. He wasn't laughing when Bakugou actually paid it though, then leaned in with a leer.
What am I? Your sugar daddy?
Hitoshi wasn't even into that, but damn, being teased by Bakugou felt kind of like being dipped in lava. Hot and overwhelming, and Hitoshi hadn't really been able to think straight for the rest of his shift after that remark. Hitoshi's shifts weren't always regular, but Bakugou showed up consistently enough that Hitoshi suspected he actually checked on a regular basis. Well, Bakugou's agency was fairly nearby, which kind of explained it. Not entirely, but enough that Hitoshi could put off the concerning question of why Bakugou might be going out of his way to spend time around Hitoshi. What had started as a fairly irritating occurrence had become something Hitoshi actually looked forward to. Bakugou had a sort of reassuring arrogance around him. It wasn't quite All Might's "don't worry because I am here" vibe, but it was similar. It was more of a "I'll kill anything that causes a problem" kind of vibe, but sometimes Hitoshi needed that after a hard couple of days of work. After the kinds of things he saw, it was comforting to be around someone who actually could annihilate any conceivable threat without breaking a sweat. Or specifically by breaking a sweat, Hitoshi supposed, since this was Bakugou. He was probably the only person alive who managed to find Bakugou's presence comforting, but here he was. Even when he was completely exhausted, just being nearby, Bakugou's inferno-like aura was invigorating. And when that failed, Hitoshi had learned Bakugou could be quiet too. On the occasional late-night shift, sometimes Bakugou would sit and read something on his phone, nursing a hot tea while Hitoshi closed up the shop. It was beyond strange. Stranger still that Hitoshi even stopped being bothered by Bakugou's increasingly roundabout ways to persuade him into a hero career. Bakugou tried insulting him, he tried more pamphlets, he tried talking to Aizawa. Aizawa had called him and told Hitoshi if he was bothered by Bakugou again, he'd gut both of them. He tried boasting about how great hero life was in a variety of ways. He tried talking salary, talking perks, talking about fame or recognition, which technically Hitoshi didn't actually get in his current gig, and repeatedly insinuated that it was all due to Hitoshi being weak or afraid or something. Hitoshi couldn't really explain why Bakugou spent any time trying to convince him to be a hero, why he kept stopping in during his shifts, why Hitoshi started looking forward to Bakugou showing up, but whatever anticipation he felt was now drenched in guilt, and he wanted to come clean. And that wasn't an option, which left Hitoshi with the painful realization that he needed to get Bakugou to back off. Their only mutual friend was Denki, and one of the few people who knew what Hitoshi actually did. Denki was also singularly unhelpful, just saying something vague about Bakugou being the mom friend and that Hitoshi should try letting him help a little. The theory being that if he helped and it didn't work, which it couldn't, then he'd leave Hitoshi alone. So Hitoshi decided to give it a try, even if it did leave him feeling sick to his stomach. Alright friends, thank you so much for joining me for chapters 1 and 2. I hope that you will come back and join me for the next video, which will be the finale or the conclusion of the story, because we're doing chapters 3, 4, and 5 in that next video. I hope that you guys like this one. I'm like discovering more and more that I read Bakugou and Shinso together. I really do like them, and sorry that their voices sound kind of similar. It's not as much of a differentiation as it is when I do Kirishima and Bakugou. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys will come back to join me in another video. And if you do, I'll see you next time.